support, restructuring our debts, and all those conversations. From where you sit, will that be the savior of our present economic situation?
You know, if you watch what has happened over the last 6 years, well, you'll notice, for instance, the only time they've had any real positive performance were the first 3 years when they came into office, 2017, 18, 19. And watch well, what happened really in that period? That was a period when they actually came and continued the IMF program that they met when they came into office.
Right.
And as soon as they stepped out of the IMF, the trouble started. In fact, the trouble actually had started even in the year 2019. You could see already by 2019, the debt had already ballooned. The debt to GDP was already showing, that we were in danger. The amount of money that we were committing to servicing our debt was showing that we were already getting into trouble. You understand? So clearly the signs were there. And you could see that they were making a special effort to hide the truth. That's why you're hearing things like, for example, in terms of the deficit, they didn't want the deficit to look high, so they hide it and call it below the line. So, for example, things that had to do with, for example, energy sector, things that had to do with the banking sector, they tried to hide it and create the impression that the deficit was not high, but the deficit was high. What you are hiding, thinking you are deceiving the country, was manifesting the higher debt of the country. Remember that we had been in office. We had met things like what you call legacy debt for the whole energy sector.
Right.
In fact, that's why we started what you call the ESLA, which was meant to help resolve a legacy of huge debt in the energy sector. We also met challenges in what you call the banking sector. When we came, for example, in 2009, we had to actually look for huge funds to salvage Ghana Commercial Bank. That was on the brink of collapse because of huge debt that was coming from TOR. Now, those were done, and we never ran away from letting the country know what the real deficit was and what the debt was. But they think they were smart. Because as I tell you, their whole mindset is how can we deceive the people in order to keep power? Whereas we were committed to saying, you know what? We need to let the people know the truth. That's the only way you can get their buy-in and let them appreciate, even though things look difficult, this is the situation, and therefore let's find answers. They believe that governance is all about how much lies you can tell, how you can deceive people, how you can spin them, how you can con them, how you can bribe journalists so that they'll cover the truth for you, how you can pervert institutions, how you can throw money left and center and pervert the country, corrupt the country, and keep power.
Are you not being too hard on the government?
No, I'm not. I'm not at all. I am not at all. I tell you this because, my brother, I've seen where we are coming from. I've seen where we are. A lot of the young people today have not seen that. Some of us have seen it. I've seen, for example, the journey that took us from 1982, when this country was absolutely on the brink of collapse, when infrastructure was totally shattered, where the export sector was nothing to write home about, where our capacity to export was totally gone. Our ports, our harbors, our telecommunication, electricity hadn't reached where it was. In fact, the country was inside that strait. Our young people literally were trekking. Not like today that they are looking to trek to Europe and other places. No, we were trekking to Togo. When you go, I was born in Aflao myself, so I could see our boys were Shushan boys in Lome, in Benin. Our ladies were doing all kinds of things in Cote d'Ivoire, in Nigeria. We had absolutely sunk in terms of our confidence. And I saw that country turn around after a period of 10 years, not become paradise, but through a genuine group of patriots who love their country and brought about a transformation through very difficult processes. A decade that actually made an effort to stop not just a moral decay of the country, but an economic decay.
Are we back there?
We effectively have taken the country right back to that place again. We are taking the country. That's why I keep talking about the moral fiber of this nation. That, for me, has been the biggest worry. I see a collapse of the moral fiber. I see a nation that increasingly is becoming a nation of me first, nation second. Me first, the group second. It doesn't matter. As long as I, as an individual, can benefit, I don't care what happens to the group. As long as I can get my money, I don't care what happens to my family, what happens to my community, what happens to my country.
But the president says we will bounce back. He is hopeful that we will bounce back.
It's sad.
Why is it sad?
It's sad because, first and foremost, for you to even be talking about the fact that there is possibility of bouncing back, you need to first and foremost be, how will I call it, be remorseful enough, be honest enough about the real difficulty.
You don't see that?
I don't see that. I see a group that is constantly believing that the ordinary people are not smart. They do not know what is going on. So therefore, continue lying about the problem. So in the past, if it were not the NDC that is the cause of the economic crisis, if it's not John Mahama that was the cause of the economic crisis, suddenly now to become, it must be the banking sector. If it's not the banking sector, it must be the energy sector. If it's not the energy sector, it must be COVID. Or if it's not COVID, it must be Russia and Ukraine. It's like a constant effort to run away from the real problem and blame something else. Now, when you have a group, you know, a wise man said, a life unexamined is not worth living.
Right.
If you do not have the capacity to accept what the truth is, you cannot even start the journey towards bringing transformation and solution. And the group we are dealing with is simply, I would like to call it, it's almost like ostriches. They bury their hand in the sand and pretend the problem is coming from somewhere else, it's not from them. You cannot be talking about bouncing back when you do not have the capacity to accept the truth about the fact that you are the cause of the problem. The buck stops with you, Mr. President. The buck stops with you, Mr. Vice President. The two of you presiding over your government have been the reason why this country today has become a junk economy. We are on our knees, on the brink of collapse, not just economically, but in terms of even our moral fight.
We're going around arresting black markets, you know, dealers in forex on the fringes, and it's one of the initiatives to help us protect the city or shore it up. And then, you know, I don't know what you think about it.
It's typically what you call artificial means, and also wasting way. It's all part of the game. You're trying hard to push the blame onto somebody else. Oh, these are the reasons why the city is not stable. Oh, they are the cause of it. It's what you call, you know, the Bible, there's a statement that says you strain at the little insect. You call it a gnat in the Bible, while swallowing the camel. It's like you are busy ignoring the real thing that is causing the problem while actually chasing the little shadows.
What is the real thing?
The real thing is that what is happening is simply the fact that the international investment community has totally lost faith in the government, in the economy. They've seen the group that is handling this economy to be a group of people who cannot be trusted. You know, they often made a lot of noise when the NDC in 2015 thereabout, when we embraced the IMF program. And at the time we said there was a need for policy credibility. They went to town. They say, it tells you about how they are so corrupt that they don't even have policy credibility. They did not understand what that meant. Policy credibility does not mean that you do not have the understanding of how to manage an economy. It simply means that the international community out there, for example, Johnny, let's say, for example, that you are a medical doctor. But the people out there need another, shall I call it, another certification to be sure that you can do a job.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're not competent. So what IMF and the rest did is simply to say that, you know what, we have examined their books. We've checked their policies. We've checked the options that they put on the table. And on the back of that, we can assure you, the credit rating agencies, we can assure you, the international investors, we can assure the market, we can assure all other donors that the policy they have assurance that it will be delivered, can be trusted. That is what it was in 2015. Really, what we've seen over this period is simply a group whose policies have lacked complete credibility, because they've lied so much that the investor community have come to realize that you cannot trust them anymore. So what the IMF is really going to do for them effectively is to ensure, first and foremost, that the lies stop. And I'm sure you heard, for example, the beginning of conversation towards debt structuring.
Right.
Why? Because they even lied about the debts. So many of the debt that they have hidden. For example, Sino-Hydro. When I was in Parliament, they made every effort to lie as if it was not going to become a contingent liability. Today, the reality has come home. Sino-Hydro has to be accounted for as part of the debt. So many of the things they do, they use GET fund, for example, to collateralize. All those things have to reflect. All the energy sector debt that they were hiding, thinking they were being smart, deceiving the country, creating impression that their books were fine, deficit was low, there's no concern. All those things have now to be brought on board for everybody to see. And that shows that the IMF is simply going to tell them that you cannot continue running the way you are doing, because you are simply going to
But the president has confidence in his economic management team. Vice President Bawumia, Professor John Balfour, Ken Ofori-Atta, Dr. Koto Ose-Afriyie. He believes that they are the right pairs of hands to manage our situation. They are the ones leading the conversation with the IMF.
Yeah. And that is why I tell you, I feel sad for this country. I feel sad for this country because, first and foremost, have you ever heard of any president in the history of this Fourth Republic who, for example, has even lacked the courage to take bold decisions in terms of reshuffling his cabinet? Every single president has done so. President Kufuor moved Osafo Mafu from the Ministry of Finance and brought another person to become the Minister of Finance. You know, and key portfolios were reshuffled by different people. President Rawlings did the same. President Mahama did so many reshuffle. Some of us even moved from one sector. I was in agri and moved to transport. Exactly.
Finance.
That's what you do. You do that simply to appreciate that even if the person is good, the person could become better by being moved. Or another person could be better by coming to where they are. Or if somebody can come and build on